Hello and welcome, Breakthrough Success listeners. I'm your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast where you'll learn how to achieve the breakthroughs you've been looking for in your business and life. If you want to grow your content brand, you'll definitely want to add my latest book, Content Marketing Secrets, to your reading list. This book will teach you how to create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue. You can get your copy at Mark Guberti, that is Mark with a C. So markguberti.com/book. And now, let's dive right into the show. For episode 71 of the Breakthrough Success podcast, we are going to talk about optimizing your pay-per-click ads for epic results with our guest, Chris Dayley. Chris is a digital marketing expert with a passion for helping businesses succeed online. After spending years driving traffic through SEO and digital marketing efforts, Chris turned his attention to the user experience of websites to see if he could influence traffic to convert better. He merged his conversion optimization company with Disruptive Advertising, where he currently works as VP of Site Testing and Optimization. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Chris to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Chris, I look forward to diving into this interview, but before we go really deep into optimizing pay-per-click ads, I'd love to get some backstory. So when did you first see pay-per-click ads as a big opportunity for businesses?
Well, so I got started actually in the digital marketing space in about 2009. And when I very first started, I was doing search engine optimization. So, it's all about getting your website ranked on Google. And so I started out in the organic space. And when I got really excited about pay-per-click was, anybody who's done SEO in the past knows that SEO takes a long time. It's typically a 6-month waiting game. You're working on things, but it'll typically take about 6 months to really start seeing results. And even then, it's really hard to quantify what kind of impact each of your individual efforts is having. And so when I was introduced to pay-per-click, it was probably a couple of years after I started doing search engine optimization. The thing that I loved about it was kind of the immediacy of it. You can start running ads today and start getting traffic to your site immediately. So that was really exciting to me. And very same thing with kind of optimizing your website for that traffic that you're getting. When you start running tests on your website, you start seeing an impact immediately. So it was probably about 2012 when I really started to dive in to more of the PPC side and then the website optimization portion. And I didn't really think about starting my own company until, I was never really entrepreneurial growing up. And so I didn't actually consider starting my own company until I needed help. I was running my own strategies in-house, and I recognized I didn't have enough time. It was hard to get the resources to get the support that I needed. And so I actually thought about hiring an agency to help me. So that's kind of when I decided to try out the entrepreneurial journey. And that was around 2014. So it's been a little bit of a crazy ride.
Chris, thank you for sharing with us the backstory of when you first saw pay-per-clicks really click through in the sense where you see this as a really nice opportunity. And since then, you've run a lot of pay-per-click advertisements. And with this knowledge, I'm wondering, how can we get those low-cost targeted cost per clicks? Because that's something that a lot of businesses are definitely pursuing.
Yeah. And so one of the first things that you need to do before you start doing any kind of pay-per-click advertising or before you start optimizing your website, the first thing you need to do is figure out who your customer is. And, most businesses think that they have this figured out. But, you need to put together some kind of a customer profile or a customer avatar. And this needs to include things like income levels, interests, where these people are going to be. If you're going to do PPC on Google, you can reach just about everyone. If you're going to do PPC, if you're going to do paid ads on Facebook, you need to make sure that your demographic is active on Facebook. You want to make sure that you have a few different ways of reaching these people so that you can test out different things when you actually start running ads. Because one of the biggest mistakes I see companies make when they start doing either PPC or start testing their website experience is they're only looking at things for one person, for one very specific person. And so when you're doing any kind of pay-per-click advertising, again, whether you're doing it on Google or whether you're doing it on Facebook, it's important to test different audiences. You've got this avatar. Let's say that your customer profile is stay-at-home moms, with a household income of between $100,000 and $150,000 a year, who are interested in workout clothes. Like whatever. Maybe you're selling workout clothes. So that's your customer avatar. Well, it's a huge mistake if you just target. You create some Facebook ads and you're just targeting, women between the ages of 20 and 50 with that income level who are interested in Lululemon or, whatever, wherever you might want to create your audience. That's great. And that may very well be a high converting audience for you. But you want to try a bunch of different approaches because maybe trying a much wider targeting parameters will actually appeal. You'll find the audience that you're going to appeal to a lot better, and maybe that's actually not the audience you should be marketing to in the first place. So, step one, create your customer profiles. Step two, when you start thinking about creating your campaigns, think about it not in terms of I know who my target audience is, but I'm going to test into who my target audience is and be open for learning about who these people are and who's the most likely to convert.
Chris, thank you for sharing with us those tactics we can use to get a low-cost targeted cost per clicks. And right now you focus more on the user experience of websites, and that is really important because you could get low cost clicks and highly targeted, but if people aren't performing the right actions once they land on your site, then it doesn't matter. So how can we optimize the experience that you provide people so more people end up subscribing and buying our products and services?
Yeah, so again, kind of thinking about this in a step-by-step approach, one interesting conversation that I have with clients on a daily basis is we'll sit down, we'll take a look at a website, and I just had a conversation earlier with one of our clients that is a university. So we look at their homepage and ask, what is the goal of the homepage? What do you want people to do on this page? They go, well, I don't know. I mean, they might be here for this, or they might be here for this, and you might be here for this. So we just want to give them as much information as possible. What happens when you have a page like that is chaos. You've got 15 different things somebody could do on your website. You're trying to cater to everyone. So you end up with a really long page with lots of information. There's not a single clear call to action because you're trying not to alienate people, and it just creates a very poor user experience. And so what you want to figure out is every single page on your site should have a primary goal, a single thing that you would like people to do. And so even if you're a university and you're offering a ton of different programs, maybe the first thing you want people to do is find their program. Okay, that's a single call to action that you can have. And that's much better than saying, oh, well, they might be here to enroll, or they might be here to check their grades, or they might be here to, get information about our healthcare program, or they might be here to enroll. You're not exactly sure what they're there for. Instead of trying to cater to everyone, give your users a single clear call to action, and so that should be part of the strategy as you're building a website. Now, if you already have built your website and you didn't go through this exercise, then go through each of your pages and identify what is it that I would like someone to do. Or if you think about that from a different angle, what would somebody who came to my site want to do? Would they want to get more information? If they want to get information, maybe that's the call to action you ought to have on your page. So that's kind of step one, is identify the goal for each page on your site. And then when you go in, you can start doing some analysis of each of your pages. So, I usually take our clients through a 6-step process where we look at 6 things on a page. So we look at Value proposition. How are we building value so that people want to take action today? If we want someone to subscribe to our newsletter, why do they want to subscribe? What are we telling them that they're going to get if they subscribe? How is this going to solve a problem for them? If we want someone to buy our product, how are we communicating the value of this product to them? So looking at your value propositions, that's a great way. And this, you want to look at this directly in connection with your call to action, right? If my call to action is I want them to buy the product, my value proposition should really build up value around that call to action. If I want someone to subscribe to my newsletter, we should be building value around subscribing to the newsletter. So, again, taking that first step is critical as you go and you start analyzing your page. So we look at value proposition, we look at the call to action itself. So we know what we want people to do. How are we telling them to do that? If I want them to subscribe to my newsletter, I could say, subscribe today. I could say, start getting updates. I could say, get my free white paper, whatever it is that you're offering. There's a lot of different ways that we can communicate the same thing. And so how are we telling people to take action? How does it appear on the screen? I mean, you want to draw attention to your call to action. So you want to use contrasting colors. You want to put it in a prominent position on your page so that it's very obvious to people what you should do on the page. So we look at value proposition, we look at call to action, we look at the content itself. So this is an area where a lot of businesses go totally nuts on their website. They, a lot of companies will just put way too much content on a site, assuming that everyone wants to read everything you have to say about your business. So looking at your content, do we know what content people want? Have we tested it? Do we know not only what kind of content they want, do we know how much content they want? Are people going to read a paragraph? Are they going to read a whole page? Are they going to read 3 bullet points? What kind of information? How much do people want? Then we look at things like potential distractions. And this, again, is in connection with your call to action. We have a call to action that we want people to engage with. What could be distracting people from that? Do we have videos on the page that might be distracting people? Do we have other really bright colors on the page that are jumping out at people? Do we have a chat widget that keeps sliding up on the screen, or pop-ups, or banners that are moving? I mean, what could be distracting someone from the call to action? The next thing we look at is what might be causing anxiety for people on the page. So, people don't like to feel anxiety. They don't like to feel stupid. So is there anything on your page that might give someone anxiety? Maybe you have too much content that could cause anxiety. Maybe when I click on buy now, instead of being taken to a checkout page, I'm taken to another information page. And it's like, that's not what I was expecting. That gives me anxiety. So we look at anxiety. And then the last thing we look at on a page is how customized your mobile experience is. So if you plan on driving any kind of mobile traffic to your site, it's important that not just that you have a site that works on mobile, but that you really take into consideration the mobile experience. So what might people want to do on a mobile phone that's different than the desktop experience? Maybe people want to call. And so instead of telling them to buy now, we should have a click to call button. Maybe people are going to want to watch a video on a mobile device, and we might want to put that on there. Or maybe people don't want a video on a mobile device, so we should take that off. So it's important, again, thinking about, number one, what do you want people to do? And then number two, going through this step-by-step process and identifying where you might have opportunities to improve that experience. Looking at how can we improve our value propositions? How can we improve the call to action? How can we improve the content? Are there any distractions we might want to remove? Is there anxiety that we can maybe help resolve? And then how can we customize our mobile experience better? Those are the major things that I encourage every business that I talk to look at.
Chris, thank you for sharing with us a wide array of things we can utilize to optimize the experience users have on our sites. And one of the ways to figure out what's truly working is to do an A/B split test, where you have one page with one variable and the other page with a different variable, and you figure out which one converts better. So I'm wondering if you could briefly share with us why A/B split testing is important for paid per click ads, and more importantly, how we can get started with utilizing these split tests.
Absolutely. So one of the challenges that a lot of businesses have is they don't know what is working either on an ad or on their website. You know, I frequently will talk to business owners or marketers, and I'll say, "Why do you have this on your site? Why do you have this picture on here?" I'll say, "Oh, well, our designer just put it on there." You know, we'll talk to someone about their ad creative and say, "Well, why is this the headline?" Or why did you put this image on your Facebook ad? And we'll say, "Well, that's what my designer gave me," or "That's what our marketing team thought we should do." Very rarely do you have any real data around why that stuff should be on there. And so A/B testing is the simplest way to figure out what should be on my site, what should be in my ads. And so, speaking specifically about website testing, the other major challenge that I see companies make, or the other major mistake I see companies make, is companies will say, "Oh, okay, well, we want to make this change on the site, so we're just going to make the change, and then we'll compare our numbers this week to our numbers last week and see if they went up. And if they went up, then that means the change must be working." There's some obvious challenges and inherent problems that causes. Number one, maybe you were just going to do better this week anyways. Maybe you drove different traffic to your site this week. Maybe there was a hurricane in Texas, and all of your Texas users dropped off the map. And so, whatever. So when you just go ahead and make changes to your site and then assume that because numbers went up, that means that change is working, you a lot of times are drawing false conclusions. You're drawing false assumptions about your audience. And so I've seen businesses that have hinged an entire website redesign off of a change that they made on their site and numbers went up. And so let's redesign the whole freaking site and spend a couple $100,000 on it, and ended up completely destroying their conversion rates because they drew a false conclusion, and then they based all of their marketing decisions on that false conclusion. So A/B testing, bring this back to the question you asked. A/B testing is the easiest way to say, okay, we're going to run, let's say on our landing page, we're going to have one version that has a form on the page and one version that has a button on the page. And let's see if more people click on the button rather than engaging with the form. And so you run both versions at the same time with the same traffic. You split the traffic evenly, and you get a very clear data set that says this version clearly performs better. It helps you make smart marketing decisions. So to get started with website A/B testing, there's several tools that you'll probably want to use. One of the tools that I recommend for every business, even if you're not going to do A/B testing, is some kind of a heat mapping tool. So heat mapping is a great way of looking at how people are engaging with your page. You can look at where people are clicking on your page. You can look at how far down the page people are scrolling. That kind of information can be really helpful to you to say, hey, we've been focusing all of our time on all this content that's down at the bottom of the page, but it turns out that less than 10% of the people that come to this page actually see that content. So maybe we ought to focus our attention on other things. So a free tool that any business can get set up with is Hotjar. I love Hotjar. You can get started and set this up on like 3 pages on your site for free. And then if you want a paid plan, they are very cheap. And so this is like I said, this is a tool that I recommend to anybody, regardless of company size, regardless of whether you're going to do testing or not. It'll just give you great insights into your audience. If you do want to do A/B testing, the tools that I recommend people get started with are either VWO, Visual Website Optimizer, or Optimizely. Both of these tools have pay-as-you-go kind of plans, so you can get started and only use the amount of traffic that you need. And then if you decide to get a little bit more aggressive, they both have enterprise-level plans, so you can upgrade and run these for very large sites. But both of these tools are very easy to get started with. They're very easy to implement. It's literally just one snippet of JavaScript code that you put on every page of your website. And so it's basically just copy and paste, and you can be up and running within 30 minutes. And so if you're going to get started with testing and you've never done testing before, I usually recommend starting with a basic test. So, inside of these testing tools, it will basically load up a page on your site. So if you have the code on your site, you can load up, let's say, your home page, for example. And then you can go ahead and click on, they have a nice visual editor, so you can just click on any element on your site. So let's say you want to change the headline on your home page. You can click on the headline, it will pull up the actual code, and it will pull up the headline that you have in there, and you can just create a variation and change the headline, and then boom, you have two versions of your homepage. You have your existing homepage and your variation with a changed headline. So very, very simple. You can literally build like a headline test in 10 minutes and launch it. And that's a great way to get started with something small, something simple, and get your feet wet. Getting into more serious testing where you're getting a little bit more complicated, you're testing larger things, you're segmenting. That takes a little bit of time, and those kinds of tests can be really frustrating if you try to build one of those tests right off the bat. And so I suggest getting started with something easy, get started with one of those tools, and just get something up and running so that you can start learning about your audience.
Chris, thank you for sharing those insights on how to get the A/B split test working for your business. And I feel like when people are trying these paid per click advertisements, there are different problems that they run across that hinder them from reaching their full potential. So what, in your opinion, holds most people back from reaching their full potential with their pay per click advertisement campaigns?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've done at Disruptive is we have an audit tool that we created that we literally can just plug into people's websites, and it immediately analyzes a variety of different factors, and we'll spit out a grade for how you're doing on your ad campaigns and where your areas of opportunity are. What we found after auditing thousands of different AdWords accounts is that I think it's close to 80% of 80% of ads that are shown don't make a single conversion. So people are spending a lot of time and a lot of money driving traffic to their site that is never going to convert. And the reason that people do this is, it's really easy to get, when you start running ads, whether it's on Google or whether it's on Facebook, as soon as you start getting people to click on your ads, you kind of get a high off it. It's exciting. It's like, hey, that ad worked really well. We got someone to click on it. Ooh, let's do more of that. And so it's really easy to get in the game of just chasing traffic. But traffic is meaningless if it doesn't convert, which is one of the reasons that we do the website testing portion, is to make sure that we have a good site to send people to. We want to make sure that if we're going to send traffic to our homepage, that our homepage is going to actually convert people. It's going to send them to the right place. But just as important as optimizing your site, you want to make sure that you are, if you're showing ads to an audience of people that are just clicking on your ads and never buying anything or never signing up, you probably ought to turn off those ads. So one of the first things that we do is we'll go through a cleansing process with our clients where we turn off all of the keywords, all of the ad groups, all of the audiences that have not produced a single conversion. And typically by doing that, we're going to cut out 75% of the budget that has been spent on that you've basically been wasting. And then you can use that budget that you've just freed up and send more traffic to your campaigns that are actually producing conversions. So that's probably the biggest area that I think a lot of companies and entrepreneurs and people mistakes that they're making is they're just spending too much money on campaigns that are never going to convert.
And I do find that really interesting because you can have the campaign that brings traffic, but if you're not getting to stick around, be subscribers, and truly engage with your content, it doesn't matter how much money you're putting into your ads. And I find that a really important takeaway we should all get from this episode. And One of the takeaways that a lot of people seem to get from these episodes is that regardless of how successful anyone is, that person constantly faces challenges throughout their journey. So I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced in your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Yeah, well, there have been plenty of them. I think anybody who's ever started a business, probably fails more than they succeed, especially at the beginning. So one big challenge that I had, and this is, part of my learning process as a new entrepreneur was I had never really worked with clients before. I had quote unquote clients, but they were coworkers, bosses, CEOs, whatever, people that I was reporting to. But they always knew what I was doing. They would kind of let me do my own thing, and then I would just come back with some success metrics. When you actually start working with clients, and looking back, I realized this is also true if you're working in-house, if you're working for yourself. It's very, very important to set expectations. And I didn't know this, so going into starting a business, I got a few clients and I treated them just like I would treat coworkers. Just kind of assuming that they knew what was going to happen, or giving them unrealistic expectations, because I didn't understand that if you set unrealistic expectations and don't meet them, people are going to be unhappy. When you're working in-house, you always want to set those stretch goals, the goal that you probably won't achieve, but maybe you will, and it'll be awesome if you do. Those are the goals that when you're working internally are appropriate to set, and they're okay to set. And people don't get really angry if you don't meet them. But if you have a client and you say, hey, you should expect a 10x ROI, and then you get them a 5x ROI, even though 5x ROI is awesome, because you told them to expect a 10x ROI, they're going to be unhappy. So I made this mistake very early on. I told some of my clients that they should that almost every test that we run is probably going to be successful. And that is absolutely not the case. Anybody who's ever done testing, whether it's testing for ads or testing on a website, knows that a large majority of your tests are not going to succeed. But again, I was trying to be optimistic and get the client excited. And so I set unrealistic expectations. Well, what happened? 2 months into this relationship, we had a few failed tests. And because I had set these unrealistic expectations, the client was unhappy, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to reset expectations. And ultimately, I ended up losing this client. And it was not due to poor results. We were having fantastic results, but I had set unrealistic expectations, and I didn't know how to just really clearly communicate. And so that was a hard lesson to learn, and that was a lesson that I had to learn many times before I started to really understand this whole principle of set appropriate expectations, meet and exceed. And this is one of the things that we really believe here at Disruptive is we really believe in meeting and exceeding our clients' expectations. Anytime you can exceed someone's expectations, whether it's a client, whether it's a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, if you can do something above and beyond what they're expecting, that is a great way to build a solid relationship. So anyways, I think I've said probably enough about that.
Chris, thank you for sharing with us that big challenge and the powerful lesson you learned. And I do feel like we definitely want to encourage others, motivate them by giving these goals, but we should also think, are we absolutely sure we can get this goal accomplished? Or in the case of a stretch goal, is this a goal that I can accomplish? I feel like I believe I have the ability to accomplish this goal, because that helps keep everyone on the same page. And speaking of pages, I've gone through quite many pages in all of the books that I've read. Many people on Breakthrough Success know that I'm a really big bookworm. So I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 great books that would be a great fit for Breakthrough Success listeners.
Yeah, you bet. I'm sure this one probably gets shared a lot, but whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're working in-house, I love the 4-Hour Work Week. Some people, when they hear the title of the book, will like recoil or cringe or be like, oh, that sounds so dishonest. But the things that I like about this book is it encourages you to look at what you really want out of life, what kind of goals you want to accomplish, what kind of person you want to become, and then designing your life around those goals. Instead of, a lot of people will, kind of look forward to the day when they can finally retire and then, start learning how to paint or learn another language or whatever. So anyways, there's some really, really great chapters in this book about figuring out what kind of skills you want to develop or experiences you want to have, and starting to have those experiences now and not waiting until you retire or waiting until you make more money to accomplish those goals. So I love the 4-Hour Workweek. Another book that I love is Freakonomics. If anyone's not familiar with this book, it is fantastic. It's a fantastic way of approaching data. So these guys will kind of take events in the world, or they will take things that have happened, and they'll look at them from they'll look at the data from a different angle than is commonly accepted, and really challenge a lot of assumptions that people have about the world. So I love that idea, again, because I'm not just because I'm a tester, but because I'm very interested in people. And so I love the way that these guys look at data, and I love the way that they challenge assumptions. So Freakonomics, the 4-Hour Workweek, and then I just, this has been a popular business book for decades now, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is just, I think, a classic for developing habits that so that you are living a deliberate life. So those are kind of 3 of my favorite books.
Chris, thank you for sharing those great book recommendations with us. For any listeners interested in seeing the links to those books, you can head over to markgilberti.com/E71, where the show notes and more will be. Before we get to the part where you share with listeners where they can find you on the web, I've been asking you a bunch of questions, and with that in mind, I'm wondering, what is one question you believe we need to be asking ourselves more often?
That's a great question. And I want to go to a business question, but really just from a personal standpoint, I think that this also has business applications as well. But the question that I encourage my employees and other people that that I'll talk to or that I'll mentor, that I encourage people to really just ponder on is, what kind of person do I want to be? This can, again, in a business situation, you can look at this and say, I want to be someone who is proactive. I want to be someone who is who is exceptional. I want to be someone who is energetic and motivating to be around. In a relationship, you might say, I want to be someone who's thoughtful, someone who is caring, someone who's kind, those kinds of things. But this has been something that's been really impactful for me. I think I've been doing this for probably like the last 6 months or so. But I asked myself this question, and then I asked myself a series of follow-up questions around this. What am I willing to do to become this person? What am I willing to give, or what am I willing to give up to become this person that I want to be? Those are powerful questions to really consider, because in order to accomplish a goal you've never accomplished before, you have to be willing to do things you've never done before. And so, if you are just sitting around going, oh, I hope that I'm successful someday, it's never going to happen. But if you're able to ask yourself, what can I do today to become that successful person I want to be? It's just a powerful way to live your life. So that's the question I'd encourage people to think about.
Chris, thank you for asking that great question to all of us at Breakthrough Success. And for all the listeners wondering, where can we find you on the web?
Yeah, so I would love people to look me up. I'm on Twitter at Chris Dayley. My last name is Dayley. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I also have a starter guide that I put together for anyone who is interested in diving a little bit more into the website testing that we were talking about earlier. So people can download that for free at disruptiveadvertising.com/guide. And there's a little checkbox if people are interested in talking with us. They can check that box and we'll get in contact with them. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and download the guide for free.
All right, Breakthrough Success listeners, those links and more will be at the show notes at marketbirdie.com/E71. Chris, it was such a pleasure to have you on the Breakthrough Success podcast.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. Two ways you could do this are through marketbirdie.com/iTunes or marketbirdie.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. Want your tweets get retweeted to my 360,000 Twitter followers? All you have to do is say something nice about the Breakthrough Success podcast and include the link marketbirdie.com/iTunes. Once you've posted that tweet, email me, mark@marketbirdie.com, and I will retweet your tweet to my 360,000 followers. This podcast is a production done by Mark Birdie. For more insights, head on over to markbirdie.com.